America expected a tense exchange, but Jasmine Crockett showed up prepared, brought her documents, and shifted the entire tone of the event. The moment she responded directly to Trump, everything changed. It wasn't even 10 minutes into the broadcast before the whole atmosphere flipped. Millions of people were watching, from living rooms, airports, hospital waiting areas, noisy bars, and phones propped up on dashboards. The White House Forum on National Policy isn't usually the kind of program people expect big moments from. Yet somehow it had the entire country paying attention. Some viewers tuned in for policy, others for the back and forth, but everyone ended up getting far more than they expected. Bright studio lights filled the room, making every expression clear on camera, even the subtle ones that politicians usually manage to hide. President Trump stood at the podium discussing trade policy with his usual strong, confident delivery. His voice carried across the room, and his hand gestures were wide and familiar, like he was trying to guide the entire discussion with his movements. Across from him sat Representative Jasmine Crockett. She was quiet for the moment, hands folded, one finger resting lightly on her notes. Her posture was straight but calm, giving the impression of someone who was prepared, not pressured. She didn't look rushed or uneasy. She looked ready. You could almost sense the room tighten in anticipation. Then Trump shifted the topic and said, "And let's talk about Representative Crockett, since she likes to speak boldly about." He leaned toward the microphone and said, "She talks a lot about budgets and responsibility. But where are the actual results? Where's this record everyone says she has?" A wave of murmurs moved through the audience, some surprised, others reacting like they were watching a show. Even the moderator looked up from her notes. Realizing the entire discussion had just taken a sharp turn, Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't even look unsettled. Instead, she raised her chin just slightly while Trump continued speaking, doubling down with even more force. "She's quick to criticize my administration," he said. "But what has she actually accomplished besides getting attention online? What laws has she pushed that help the American people? I've passed historic legislation. I've built things." She posts. That comment triggered a mix of responses from the crowd. A few laughs, some shocked reactions, and a long stretch of tense silence. The camera zoomed in on Crockett, close enough that viewers could see the stage lights reflecting off her earrings. She picked up a sheet of paper. No sign of panic. No hurry. Just someone fully prepared to answer. Trump knew exactly what he was trying to do. He wanted a reaction, something dramatic enough to turn into a headline or a short clip. For a moment, it seemed like he might get that moment, the confident president pushing the pressure onto her. But instead of shrinking, Crockett's presence grew stronger. While he talked, she organized her notes, not because she was unsure, but because she was choosing her words with care. Her eyes stayed on him, steady and focused, as if she was examining his entire argument and planning exactly how to respond. Someone in the front row whispered, "She's about to respond." And another person leaned forward, eyes locked on the stage. The whole exchange felt bigger than politics. It felt like one of those encounters people remember years later, full of tension, confidence, and preparation. The moderator tried to restore order. "President Trump, let's allow Representative." But he cut her off with a raised hand. "No, I want to know what she's actually done." The room went silent. Crockett leaned into her microphone. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried more weight than anything said so far. "You wanted details," she said calmly, tapping the papers in front of her. "I brought a full folder." The audience reacted immediately. It wasn't laughter this time. It was anticipation, like everyone knew a shift was coming. She didn't raise her voice or mirror Trump's energy. She simply stayed steady, which somehow felt even stronger. You could sense the entire building holding its breath as she opened her folder. Viewers across the country stopped talking, stopped moving, and just watched. Everyone understood this wasn't everyday political back and forth. This was the beginning of a defining moment, and the discussion hadn't even truly started yet. The moderator attempted again to bring the event back on track, but by then, both Trump and Crockett were far outside the usual structure. What was meant to be a routine forum had become something personal, almost like two opponents facing each other in a ring built for microphones and cameras. Trump leaned back, arms crossed, watching her closely as if expecting her to falter under the attention. His supporters in the room looked eager, hoping he would overshadow her. But Crockett turned to her first page with complete composure. No shaking hands, no hesitation, just focus. "You asked what I've done," she said, her tone crisp and confident. "So let's talk about actual work, not posts online." Trump leaned forward slightly. Even his microphone picked up the sound of his shift. For someone used to controlling every room, his body language showed both curiosity and irritation. Crockett continued, "In the last 2 years, I've co-sponsored 14 bills on federal housing reform. 5 of them were signed by you. 1 expanded relief for farmers in West Texas, which you publicly praised outside the Oval Office because it supported rural communities. Another increased funding for VA clinics. You called that one historic, and I agreed." A few people in the audience clapped softly, unsure if they should go further. Trump opened his mouth to respond, but Crockett raised her hand slightly, not to interrupt out of disrespect, but to keep her thought clear. "I've also secured budget amendments for public defenders in Harris County and worked on bipartisan mental health protections. Because you have the luxury of criticizing decisions after they're already made." Trump finished, leaning back as if he'd sealed his point, but Crockett didn't flinch. She closed the folder halfway, hands resting lightly on the edges, a posture that seemed almost casual, except the room could feel it wasn't. It was the kind of calm that comes right before the temperature changes. "Compromise," she repeated, as if testing the word. "Mr. President, compromise is when 2 sides negotiate in good faith, not when one side cuts programs quietly and explains it loudly later." A few people in the crowd murmured again, that soft ripple of discomfort mixed with curiosity, the sound of an audience realizing they weren't watching a forum anymore, but a clash of philosophies dressed as a conversation. Trump opened his mouth, but she kept going. "And let's be honest," she said, tilting her head. "If we're talking luxury, you've had the luxury of power, the luxury of a national platform, the luxury of rewriting your own decisions as many times as you needed until they sounded good." She let the words land slow, direct, surgical. Trump rubbed his thumb along the edge of the podium, a small, restless gesture the cameras didn't miss. "See, that's the thing," Crockett continued. "You think criticism is a luxury, but where I'm from, accountability is survival. Families need results, not slogans. Workers need protection, not talking points. Children need meals, not political strategy." She lifted the folder again. "You asked what I've done," she said. "So let's talk about the families in Houston who kept their housing because of my amendments. Let's talk about the small businesses in Dallas that stayed open because of bipartisan loan protections I co-wrote. Let's talk about the disaster relief grants that hit Louisiana faster because my office pushed FEMA to accelerate the timetable you delayed." Trump's expression tightened, not anger, not surprise, but something in between, something like a calculation shifting. "You're great at volume," Crockett added softly, "but I'm great at verification." A wave of oaths rolled through the audience, unplanned and unstoppable. Trump's jaw set. "I've built more than you ever will." Crockett didn't blink. "I build trust," she answered. "And unlike buildings, trust doesn't crumble when someone turns the cameras off." The room fell into a kind of charged hush, the kind that makes even the production crew freeze. The moderator, sensing the moment had shifted again, tried to regain footing. Let's return to the original policy question." But Trump leaned forward one more time. "You think this performance is leadership?" he asked. "You think you can stand there and lecture me on what this country needs?" Crockett finally closed her folder. "I'm not performing," she said. "I'm informing. There's a difference." And the audience, for the first time that night, erupted into full applause. No hesitation, no uncertainty, just a wave of sound meeting a moment that demanded it. Trump stared at her across the stage. Crockett stared right back. Neither moved. And for the first time in the entire forum, it wasn't clear which one of them held the power in the room. "You never had to prove yourself," Crockett said, leaning an elbow on the desk, calm and conversational. "I challenge decisions that harm people. I do it because leaders should be questioned. Leaders should be challenged. If your choices are strong, they don't crumble under scrutiny." She didn't blink. You came at me tonight expecting me to fold. You expected performance, not proof. But I came prepared, and the public deserves truth more than a show. A man near the back whispered loudly enough for nearby rows to hear. She's dismantling him without even raising her voice. Across social media, clips were already spreading like wildfire. Hashtags hadn't fully formed, but viewers could feel the shift. This wasn't entertainment or spectacle, it was precision. A president asserting dominance. A congresswoman responding with evidence. Trump straightened, tone sharpening. Now you're acting like you're above politics, using this moment for your brand. You're grandstanding. Crockett replied calmly, almost gently, no. I'm answering the question you asked. You wanted my record. I gave you data. You wanted to measure power. I showed you substance. If transparency feels like grandstanding, that says more about you than me. For the first time, his silence lasted long enough for the audience to register it. Crockett continued, steady and deliberate. I respect the office you hold, truly. But respect isn't immunity. You can't call someone irrelevant 1 minute and attack them the next. If I didn't matter, you wouldn't be here trying to make an example of me. Trump swallowed, subtle but visible. You're turning this forum into a fight, he said. No. Crockett shook her head. I'm turning it into an honest conversation. You brought confrontation. I brought receipts. A slow wave of applause moved through the auditorium, steady and deliberate. History wasn't loud tonight. It was precise. She lifted another sheet from her folder, placing it flat on the desk like a card on a table. And if we're discussing leadership, let's finish the conversation properly. Every person in the room leaned forward, even Trump. The moderator paused mid-sentence, sensing the moment. Crockett set her final sheet on the desk. No theatrics, no trembling, just quiet certainty. The camera zoomed close enough to suggest evidence, without revealing it entirely. Viewers leaned closer to screens across the country. Trump cleared his throat, voice rising. You've read your numbers. You've got your paperwork. But paperwork doesn't run a country. Real leadership does. History does. And I'm still the one in the Oval Office. Crockett held her gaze, calm and unwavering. Yes, you're in the Oval Office, which means your decisions affect lives, markets, schools, hospitals, grocery receipts, mortgages. Leadership isn't just sitting in a chair. It's about what you do while you're in it. The audience was silent, straining to catch every word. Even small movements, a shuffle of legs 2 rows back, could be heard. Trump's eyes measured her, trying to gauge how far she could push. She went farther. Since we're discussing accomplishments, she said, tapping the document. Let's compare. Here is your internal budget summary, signed and dated. It confirms reductions in rural infrastructure grants while increasing discretionary spending on projects benefiting contractors tied to campaign donors. A ripple of shock ran through the crowd, and journalists immediately began typing. Trump tightened his grip on the microphone. That document is misleading. You're using isolated numbers without explaining national security needs. We have threats you don't know about. Crockett listened, letting every word land before replying. If there were threats, why did your intelligence briefings recommend supporting infrastructure resilience to prevent economic destabilization? Why did the Commerce Department push for expanded grants only to see them rejected? Your secretary told the press the cuts were for budget balancing, not defense. Trump exhaled sharply. You're twisting this. You think you know more about national security than my cabinet. She raised her hands, framing her words like a window between them. I don't know more than your cabinet. I know what's written here. I know what your department said publicly. I know the facts. And so do the people watching tonight. The audience reacted, part gasp, part applause. Trump leaned forward, voice low and confrontational. Are you accusing me of mismanaging funds? Crockett's voice remained calm, firm. I'm asking why the burden of proof always falls on the public instead of the policymakers. Silence fell like a weight. 3 full seconds. Not a word from moderators, analysts, or Trump. Millions of viewers sat still. Crockett finally spoke. You came here to question my legitimacy, my record. I answered respectfully, with documentation and clarity. But leadership isn't only about questioning others. It's about answering questions yourself. Her words landed like concrete. Even those who disagreed couldn't deny her composure. The president opened his mouth, but the moderator intervened. "We need to move forward," she said, voice shaking but resolute. Representative Crockett has made her response. Let the viewers and voters interpret the exchange for themselves. But the audience wasn't just interpreting. They were witnessing something rare, a shift in real time, a confrontation defined by preparation, precision, and unwavering focus. Phones buzzed across studios. Commentators scribbled frantic notes. Producers signaled camera crews to stay tight. No one wanted to cut away. The tables had fully turned. This wasn't just Crockett defending herself anymore. This was Crockett defining herself on live national television. But the forum wasn't over, and America hadn't yet seen the moment that would make this clash impossible to forget. By the time the broadcast hit a commercial break, the internet had already erupted. Clips of the exchange climbed trending lists faster than platforms could refresh. Short recordings pulled from live streams spread across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Some focused on Trump's questions, others on Crockett's calm, measured responses. The most shared clip captured the exact moment she said, "Leadership is answering questions yourself." Viewers replayed it like music. They couldn't get out of their heads. Cable networks went live instantly. CNN ran. Crockett challenges Trump with facts on live broadcast. Fox asked, "Did Crockett misrepresent spending data?" MSNBC ran. Crockett's calm response stuns forum crowd. Scrolling through social media, you saw arguments erupting. Some cheered her on. Others called it disrespect. But no one could deny one thing. She held her ground. Documents in hand. No shouting. No stumbles. Steel wrapped in velvet that a clip surfaced from a bar in Phoenix. Patrons paused mid-conversation. Phones lifted. Someone said aloud, "She just owned him right there." And the room responded with that stunned, electric reaction people make when they watch a game-winning shot. In a Milwaukee living room, a retired postal worker leaned forward in his recliner, whispering, "She really came ready." His grandson, curious for the first time about politics, slipped off his headphones. In a Cleveland hospital break room, 3 nurses paused in front of the TV, still in wrinkled uniforms from a 14-hour shift. One said, "I don't usually watch this stuff, but I have to see what happens next." This wasn't passive viewership. People were participating. They were witnessing a turning point unfold in real time, not through documentaries, not filtered by history books, but raw and uncut. When the forum returned from the commercial break, the stage lights hit again. Both Trump and Crockett remained seated, but everything between them had changed. She no longer looked like a guest. She looked like a contender. He no longer looked like unquestioned authority. He looked like someone calculating his next move. The moderator tried to steer the discussion back to policy, but the tone had shifted irreversibly. Viewers didn't just want statistics or regulations. They wanted resolution. They wanted the next moment, the next reveal, the next swing in momentum. Trump reached for his microphone. "I think the American people saw what happened before the break," he said, voice firm, attempting to regain control. "We had a back and forth. She had her chance to speak. Now let's get serious about protecting our country." He tried to pivot to immigration, outlining border challenges, federal security priorities, and patrol expansion, speaking strong and authoritative, trying to reset the spotlight. But Crockett didn't interrupt. She waited. When she answered, viewers weren't listening the same way anymore. Even those who agreed with his policies couldn't forget what had just happened. They couldn't unhear the clarity, the poise, the evidence she laid out, methodical, deliberate, impossible to ignore. The momentum had shifted, and it wasn't coming back.